Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our November 17, 2022 Planning Board meeting. We are happy to have you here tonight. If you would like to speak at all, please make sure that you fill out a green form, get it up to our secretary. We will have a 3-minute limit for each speaker, and we do appreciate you being here. Ms. Fountain, may we have a roll call, please? Present.
Present.
Mr. McNean,
Here.
Mr. Robinson,
Present.
Mr. Servance,
Present.
Ms. Washington.
Present.
So, Mr. Chair, as you know, Ms. Washington announced present from a remote location. In order for Ms. Washington to be able to attend, she asked to give a brief explanation as to why she can't be here, and then this board has to allow her to attend based on extraordinary circumstances. You would do that by a motion.
Yes, sir. All right, so could we have a motion, please?
Before the motion, Ms. Washington has to give a brief explanation as to why she can't attend.
My reason for not being present this evening, or not being present at the most recent meetings, is that during the last hurricane, my home was flooded. It is unlivable at present. I'm living in Orlando, and I don't do night driving. I have a problem with night blindness. So I'm willing to attend via Zoom if it's approved by the board.
Okay.
Does that require a motion?
Oh, it
Yes.
does. Move approval, Mr.
So
Chairman.
moved.
So second.
We have a motion properly second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers have the same right. Carries. Ms. Washington, thank you for joining the meeting. Item number 3, approval of minutes.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman. I second.
Okay. Any corrections or no? All right. We have an approval and a second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers have
Aye.
the same right. Thank you. Again, just want to remind all of you tonight, we appreciate you being here. If you wish to speak, make sure we complete a green form, turn it in to our secretary. We'll have a 3-minute time limit, and we do appreciate you being with us here. And we understand it's pre-Thanksgiving, and you're excited about getting out there. So, item number 4, please.
Daytona MRH at Volusia Mall, site plan DEB 2022-140, quasi judicial hearing.
And we hear from staff, please.
Anna Ward, Senior Planner of the City. So this is a request by Mark Dowst with Mark Dowst and Associates, and it's on behalf of MRH Daytona Beach LLC, who's the current property owner, and it's to approve a major site plan to develop a 350-unit multifamily dwelling and all associated site improvements on approximately 10 acres of land located at 261 Bill France Boulevard. So the site is located approximately 600 feet east of the Bill France and Legends Lane intersection. It's actually in the location of the Macy's that is now vacant, as you can see from the aerial view. The future land use on the property is retail, and the zoning on the property is business retail 2, BR2. So up until 2021, the property operated as the Macy's department store, and since has been vacant, and no land use or zoning changes have been made to allow for the proposed use they're bringing forward now. As you can see here is the overall development plan for the property. You can see that it's going to be one building. It's got a central courtyard area, and then the parking wraps around the outside of the building. As you can see here, the proposed architectural elevations for the multifamily structure. They tried to kind of keep architecture so that it would fit in with also the mall. And some of the details here, there's 350 dwelling units proposed. The parking is proposed consistent with land development code requirements, and all of the reductions noted are land development code compliant. The building design was reviewed for compliance with the city's major city thoroughfare design standards. Landscaping complies with the land development code. The signage also complies with the land development code for the multifamily portion of the property. And then the building height, that's required to obtain an FAA height determination prior to the issuance of building permits. So they'll be providing that information as it becomes available. And then prior to site plan approval, any outstanding stormwater related comments will also need to be resolved. So provided the FAA height determination is acceptable and the stormwater comments are resolved with staff, staff recommends approval of the Volusia Mall Apartments major site plan for the construction of a 350-unit multifamily dwelling. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to approve the application, and this concludes staff's presentation.
Yeah, are there questions for staff?
Just one quick one, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes, sir.
And I noticed on page 4 of our staff report, it talks about issuing a concurrency certificate, and the response is that staff had reviewed it and found it to be acceptable. Does that mean the certificate has been issued, or we're waiting on that?
So we don't, I think we discussed this at the last meeting that I attended, but we don't actually have a concurrency certificate. The concurrency is reviewed as part of the site plan process. That would include availability of utilities, water and sewer at the site. They're also required to get a school concurrency determination from the school board. And then all of the reviewers that represent the technical review team are a part of that process, reviewing for compliance with the land development code.
In answer to that question, yes, we did talk about it, but I wanted to put it on the record. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about the landscaping for this particular piece of property?
So there's landscaping that's going to be wrapping around the perimeter of the site. They also have building perimeter landscaping that's proposed. All of that has been reviewed for compliance with the land development code. Since this is straight zoning, everything on site had to be fully code compliant for them to come forward this way.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Thank you very much. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Mark Douse, and I'm a project engineer with the firm Mark Douse & Associates. Our offices are located at 536 North Halifax.
Thank you.
Have the pleasure of representing this project tonight. Also with me tonight are Naeem Coleman and John Wood. They're with Legacy Partners, who are part of the development team. They're in the audience. Just a couple of things I want to mention. The staff report covered pretty much everything. We do have the FAA approval.
Oh, you do? Good.
Yes, we do. And the stormwater comments was a little question because we hadn't received any, but I reached out to Chris Hurst and he verbalized some, and his concerns are easily addressed. So,
And if I can, Mr. Chair, Mr. Hurst confirmed that in a conversation with me before the meeting.
Thank you.
although we talked briefly about concurrency, this building was the site was occupied by a 159,000 square foot building, and when you compare traffic, it's far less. So it's actually a reduction in traffic. So we're very pleased to bring it to you. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer them.
Okay, questions for applicant? Mr. Robbins?
Given the last hurricanes that we've had
Yes.
and the flooding, the issue of flooding, how does your construction going to affect?
Sure. Well, a couple of things. Well, first of all, right now, it's just completely paved. But because we are redeveloping it, it has to have stormwater. So you don't see the ponds, but there's actually stormwater trenches that are underneath the parking lots. So when this project is built, it'll actually result in a reduction in stormwater leaving the site. As an engineer, every time we have a big storm, I'm driving the next day looking to see where the high waters are, and we pound nails for surveyors to come back and check them. And one thing that was interesting here is the whole mall drains into a ditch, which is just to the north. And I observed that the very next day, and it had already drawn down. And I didn't expect that. I thought it would respond slower, but actually this particular area has very good drainage.
I am also concerned about the traffic in that area. We just built a new
Sure.
apartment complex right there, and there's like 3 apartment complexes, or multifamily apartment complexes on that road. And now you introduce 350 more apartments.
Yep. Well, we're required to do traffic analysis before and after. And this was, of course, the site of Macy's, which was, I think, 159,000 retail. And so when you compare that retail trip generation to the multifamily, it's actually far less. So if Macy's, if they could have found another retail tenant to occupy Macy's, we would have had more traffic than what we have with this. So this actually results in a reduction in traffic.
And just to be clear for the board members, traffic concerns would not be a legitimate basis for us to deny this site plan. Under state law, if there are traffic impacts associated with the development, they're not a basis to deny as long as the developer strokes a check for the proper amount of proportionate share fees required by law representative of their impact.
Other question?
Actually, a question for Mr. Gross. So you mentioned about that we have solved the FAA height situation,
We
Mr.
we did receive that.
Yeah.
and you discussed it with him.
No, the question that I had discussed had to do with a comment in the staff report recommending approval subject to stormwater comments. I spoke with Chris Hurst from our Public Works Department, he's an engineer, and he's satisfied that his comments were addressed.
My point is, and thank you, my point is in the motion, when we get there, should we be including, in this case, all stormwater comments being accepted? Should that be part of the motion? If that's already been dealt with?
I think it would be acceptable if you wanted to include that,
Okay.
but you don't need to do that.
I have no objection to that.
Yeah.
What was Mr. Hurst's concerns?
There's a lot of calculations, pages and pages and pages of analysis that are used to describe the current situation versus the proposed situation in terms of the amount of stormwater runoff total, the velocity of that runoff, because those are the two applicable standards. And in just perusing the document, Mr. Hurst explained to me, he thought he saw an error in the calculation. But ultimately, that error wouldn't matter because, as Mr. Dowse pointed out, there's a net improvement of drainage that's going to have to happen as a result of this site plan. And so that's going to be code compliant.
He was interpreting it as a dry bottom recovery, but this is an under drain system, and that's what his question was really about.
What happened to the Sears building, part of it?
Well, I don't know.
We don't know yet.
It's tough when you have a mall like this and retail is undergoing lots of changes, and we're constantly, in all of our retail centers, we're trying to adjust, reposition to keep them healthy.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are turning into mixed use or entertainment venues, and that's where they're going. And it's a good mix.
If you
Great
look,
mix.
I'm sorry, if you look at the maps behind page 4, the second map, which is an aerial photo of the mall, it outlines in red this property. This is actually a separate lot.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I've reviewed this. The whole mall has already been subdivided years back, so that those are separate lots. So the Sears that you're talking about, Mr. Robinson, is a separately platted lot from this lot.
Okay. Ms. Washington, do you have any questions or comments?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
Of no importance. It's just interesting that back in the 80s, when they built the mall, Beach Street suffered, and now it perhaps will revert the other way, although this new construction, if those people shop in the mall, it'll help the mall. But I
It will.
think this is going to bode well for out there where you're building, and I think it will also help Beach Street. And the other thing that doesn't really matter is it's nice that my building is located on Main Street, which is the highest point on the peninsula, which is why they built the graveyard there. They didn't want the coffins popping up. So we have never had any water problem there, ever.
Sounds like a good place to have your business.
I have a question in regards to items. How does this impact the rest of the mall, or what is going on in the actual mall?
Well, obviously, we communicated with them all, and they're
right.
excited. The worst thing they can have is to have a dead box, which is not a good thing. Even in a strip mall, we're working on another mall, Volusia Square, trying to revitalize that one too. So, no, they're very excited about this, and we have our front door is in the front, but we have a
Right.
direct sidewalk connection right to the mall in the back, so.
I think it's going to benefit the mall, if the mall stays there.
Well, and I'm just concerned about the other stores, especially the way it's being built around to the JCPenney side and so forth. It has an impact. It definitely has an impact, so. I have, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Appreciate it. I have, Mr. John Nicholson.
Somebody else
Yeah,
voted.
I got it. Mr. Dawes, yeah.
John Nicholson, Daytona Beach side. I've got like about 40 questions, but I'll limit it to about 10.
You got 3 minutes.
Part of this is, we spoke about, or I did, a couple of years ago about the amount of parking in the malls. We had to look at it because with the internet, there are fewer and fewer people shopping. That Thanksgiving Thursday and Friday is not what it used to be, all right? So there's a need to redo our malls, and this is one very, very wise way to do it. It's almost creating a small town at the mall. But I do have a couple of problems with this particular project. One, because of the location, that's where the buses used to go, okay? Have we considered the buses? Have we considered the traffic flow? Because you don't want that corner to be blocked off, and so people have to go a different way. So the traffic flow I'm asking to look at, for years I've been talking about trees and landscaping. Is the landscaping next to the building, or is it in the foliage way out? Because if you look at the mall, there's like no trees, no landscaping between the building itself and the perimeter of the property. It's all asphalt. So it's nice of her to be very clear as mud when she said, oh, there's landscaping there somewhere, but it didn't tell you guys where it was. And to me, that's imperative that we don't have that open asphalt, because that's what the mall is. It's a building in the middle surrounded by asphalt. We need to change that. The idea of density, we have to correct our density. We don't need miles and miles of homes outside of town. We need to create some infill, some density, and this is exactly what this thing does. What else do I have? Strip cars, again, it's going to drop the number of cars, which is, to me, the wise thing. I think the gentleman from Orlando is creating a town center out off of Granada. His whole idea is that there won't be trips up and down Granada because people are going to be staying there. These people then can walk to the mall, can walk to the restaurants, because there's now, 10 restaurants around that area? And then the Speedway is like within spitting distance. To me, this is the ideal use of the property. And I'm asking you to look at all of our malls, because we've got one on Nova Road with like 75,000 parking spaces for 3 stores. So let's pass this, and let's, one thing that I would ask is that we do the landscaping up a notch. 'Cause I went to when my sister was ill, the shopping center right down from her street, they completely redid the parking lot. And so now it looks like a park. So at some point, we're going to join the rest of the world and require the best. Let's look at the landscaping.
Thank you very much. I don't have any other speakers. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against this item?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
is it possible for the applicant to address 2 of the issues brought up by the gentleman,
Okay,
please?
thank you.
Oh, I thought it was on. I said, is it possible for the gentleman to issues be addressed in terms of the landscape
I could do that.
and the bus stop?
We do have a good landscape package, and there's landscaping up next to the buildings in the perimeter, and then also interspersed throughout the site. So it's going to look a whole lot greener than certainly what it looks like now.
And the bus stop issue?
The bus stop, we have a bus stop at Dillard's to the left. The transportation, there's a ring road that goes all the way around the mall, and that's been left intact. And then the circulation element to those 2 stores next to us has been studied, and that has been left intact. So we shouldn't have any problems with bus service. We're counting on bus service ourselves.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. May I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, provided FAA height determination is acceptable and all stormwater comments are resolved, move approval for agenda item number 4, major site plan approval, DEV 2022-140, Volusia Mall Apartments.
Second.
We have a motion, properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed have the same right. It carries. Thank you very much. Thank you. You're welcome. May we have item number 5 read, please?
Wilder Street Small Scale Comprehensive Plan Amendment, DEV 2022-193 Legislative Hearing.
And we hear from staff, please.
Good evening, Doug Gutierrez, planner with the city.
Yes.
Been a while.
Pretty sure.
Glad to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, Doug.
This is another one of those that we've, find that there's incompatible land use with the current zoning and uses. So this is a request by staff to approve a small-scale amendment to change future land use map from level 2 residential to retail for 1.36 acres and office transition to retail for 1 acre. Staff is proposing to amend future land use from office in level 2 to retail to bring the zoning and the current uses into compliance. This is the Art Crete place that it started that. It has 2 land uses on it and is really making it difficult for them to develop. And we found that adjoining properties too, and then that hotel
Yeah.
on the other side of, also has split land use. So we're just going to fix this. So these parcels have been developed as tourist, office, and restaurant in the T2 zoning category, which of course is incompatible with the current partial future land use. And we've been unable to find out whether these maps were changed for this area or been there, since the beginning of time. We did notify the property owners by letter, as we always do, notifying them that we're doing this administrative change. And the site's located generally along the east of South Ridgewood and north and south of Wilder. And then this is the arrow showing the Art Crete, and there's, I think, a doctor's office, and then the motel to the south. And as you can see that the future land uses are split, and
Maybe.
that this would rectify that.
Yeah.
So the, will allow the proposed, well, that's incorrect. That's what I get for using a previous one. But anyway, the theoretical decrease in demand in water and is a theoretical increase in traffic. However, that really is not applicable since these are currently already have uses. So we find that the small scale amendment is consistent with the comp plan. Doesn't represent sprawl, and the city is available capacity. Based on staff analysis and review, the proposed future land use map amendment from office transition and level 2 to retail appears to meet the criteria for proposed amendment. Majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the city commission and is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the commission January 4th, 2023, next year,
Next year, which is.
and second reading on January 18th. And that concludes my my report.
Okay. Yes, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Doug. Just the overall question, what brought this situation to your attention?
There was a proposed development for the Art Crete, which is now vacant. And that's when we realized we have an incompatible land use that wouldn't accommodate that.
I see.
So, and we come across that. That's how we come across.
Double.
Somebody comes over with a proposal, like, we need to fix this. So, and we'll have more in the future. Promise.
Okay, got that one. And explain to me a little bit about this, at least theoretic increase in peak hour trips
Well, when you
between
use-
52 and 13,000?
Yeah,
Caught my
when you use, in future land use, you use the highest demand, highest use. So
So
going
that's where
from,
the 933 code came
yeah,
from.
the most intensive. And it's really just kind of gives you a litmus test on, if this was built at the maximum FAR, the maximum density with the most
Top of
intensive
the
use,
mountain type thing.
can we absorb that? And, we can't. And it's interesting, it shows a large decrease in water usage. But, residential uses, consume a lot of water, and versus the retail uses, they would. So that's why you have, that's why you say theoretical, because you don't really know what the actual impact would be until, the
It's
site
actually
plan level. And this is not going
Yeah.
to really matter in this point, because it's already been developed.
Just one more question, that you mentioned water, but going through the staff report, mentioned reclaimed water not available at this site. Why not?
I don't think downtown has the reclaimed water or in the central core, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of property that's on the east side of the city that doesn't have reclaimed water. We just don't have the facilities in place to be able to serve reclaimed on that side of the city.
Okay, so it's just not available, it's not there.
It's not there, yeah.
Okay, gotcha, thank you. Thanks, Don.
Okay. Mr. Robertson.
Maybe this one is for Mr. Dennis. What's the possibility or the probability of doing a comprehensive review to ensure that we don't have these piecemeal amendments coming up? Are you, as part of your process, just wait until it brings it to your attention, or are you planning on doing a comprehensive overview to correct all these dual or incompatible sections of town? It seems to me that would be more, productive and efficient than having,
Well-
piece here, piece there.
It could be. Unfortunately, we just don't have the staffing to be able to do citywide, look at every property and the land uses. So we do see these uses come up time to time, and Doug was mentioning we do have some more that are really in the hopper waiting to come in, and we're doing the analysis on it right now. We've got some located in the Midtown area that we're doing some land use changes. We're looking at up in the downtown redevelopment area, we're doing some land use changes. So this is part of the process as we look at some of these areas. And, and things change over time as well. So what may be appropriate now may not be appropriate, or what might have been appropriate 10 years ago is not appropriate now, or may be appropriate now where it wasn't appropriate. So we kind of, and this is what part of the comp plan is a very broad look at how we expect the city to develop. So we may see changes as we go on. So there'll be changes. And it's interesting, we did a land use change in 2015, and now we're taking a look at that land use change that was done, and we're actually looking at maybe correcting some things because there was a land use change and maybe it wasn't exactly the way it should have been. So we're looking at that right now with our redevelopment staff.
Have you considered asking the city manager for additional position to do comprehensive?
Well, we always ask the city manager for additional positions. But unfortunately, it doesn't work out that
Yeah,
way.
but-
And we are short, actually, a planner as we speak. We lost a planner a couple of months ago, a very, very well-qualified planner. We haven't replaced him yet. And it's very difficult finding planners out there, so
But you have,
we're trying.
but you've asked
We're
the
trying.
city.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Okay,
yes, we have.
okay.
It's
Other
almost like,
questions for our staff?
it's like trying to set the price of gold.
We do look at surrounding properties, see if,
Sure.
they're impacted too. That's, rather than just do one, we can expand and take care of potential
Yeah.
issues.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Washington, do you have any questions for our staff?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. You're actually the applicant too, correct?
Yeah.
He's judge and jury.
Okay, board, may I have a motion?
Motion to approve small-scale comprehensive plan amendment DEV 2022-193 Wilder Street foam amendment.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposers have the same right. It carries. Thank you very much. Item number 6, please.
Daytona Hyundai Genesis Plan Development General rezoning DEV 2022-059 quasi judicial hearing.
All
Let me
right.
hear from staff, please.
Hannah Ward, Senior Planner with the city. This is a request by Rob Merrill with Cobb Cole. It's on behalf of Ritchie Properties LLC, and it's rezoning 8.5 acres from Plan Development General to Plan Development General, and it will allow for the development of a customer and inventory display parking lot to support the automobile dealership on site and to the north of the subject property. This will also include some minor upgrades to the existing dealership. So the site is located at the southwest corner of Madison Avenue and the Nova Road intersection. As you can see, there is an auto dealership that's developed there. As I understand, it's currently vacant. The future land use is retail, and the zoning is plan development general. So this was rezoned to a plan development in 2000. The development was called the John Hall Commercial Development Agreement, and it allowed for the establishment and operation of an automobile dealership on site. It's presently vacant, so they're looking to make some upgrades to bring a new tenant in there. So as you can see here, the proposed development plan primarily consists of the rear of the they're developing an automobile dealership to the north. It's going to be a Hyundai dealership. And then they want to add additional inventory storage and employee parking that will support the existing dealership to the east of the site as well as to the north. So there will be some off-site parking, and then there will also be on-site parking. So a couple of the details to the project. A portion of the area designated on the plan is only going to be used for inventory. So in those areas, they have requested for the drive aisles to be reduced from 24 feet to 20 feet because these areas are not going to be trafficked by customers. This is just going to be for the parking of vehicles. Any new buildings will be required to comply with the city's exterior color and design standards for major city thoroughfares. But as you can see, there's a pretty nice looking building currently developed on the property. Parking is LDC compliant for both the off-site parking that's proposed as well as the on-site parking. So it includes a combination of customer and employee parking as well as inventory parking. The Land Development Code requirements, as I noted in the staff report, they regulate customer and inventory parking. They do not regulate a maximum for, they regulate customer and employee parking. They don't regulate a maximum for inventory. With regard to landscaping, because the existing building doesn't really have any, they're proposing to add some landscaping along the perimeter of the site, waiving the requirements for adding any. They're also waiving the requirements for minimum tree canopy coverage. There are a bunch of palms on site already, but they didn't feel that they'd be able to meet these requirements with any redevelopment. As you know, dealerships do like to be able to display their vehicles, and that's an important part of the business. Perimeter buffers. They are requesting to waive the perimeter buffer adjacent to the stormwater pond. To the west, they're proposing to establish a vinyl fence, a white vinyl fence, 6 feet tall, and that'll help to screen the stormwater pond. But I do believe this is present developed as some sort of a park, so it's already being utilized. The Scenic Thoroughfare Overlay District landscaping, they have requested to waive the shade tree requirements in this area due to the palms that are in existence, but they have proposed to upgrade the area to include the small trees as well as the preserved understory vegetation or planted shrubs in this area. And that would be along the perimeter of the site abutting Nova Road. With regard to signage, there was one error in my staff report that I wanted to clarify. It states that the existing signs are the ones that are shown in the package, but those are actually the proposed signs. I believe that two of those may exist, but they're proposing to replace all of the ground signs. They're all going to have static copy, although it kind of looks like EMC. No EMCs are proposed. There will be a total quantity of 3 signs along the Nova Road frontage, and then the total sign area for each sign would be, or the total area for all 3 would be 600 square feet or 200 square feet per sign. With regard to the wall signs, they've requested to develop 3 wall signs on the existing building with a total area of 378 square feet for those signs. And I'll get into some of the waivers as we go along. So the Land Development Code currently permits 2 ground signs for 1 site, and they've requested to develop 3. The Land Development Code limits your ground sign area to 120 square feet. They're requesting 200 square feet per sign for a total of 600 square feet for all 3 signs. They've requested to waive the prohibition of off-site signage because they intend to potentially advertise the dealership to the north as well on the southern property because the inventory will be shared. And then with regard to the wall signs, which would presently be limited to 120 square feet per the Land Development Code with no maximum quantity, they've requested a total of 387 square feet for the signs that are shown. Now, they are proposing to potentially develop some vehicle display pads on the property. They are requesting that they be permitted to be developed within the scenic thoroughfare overlay landscape yard along Nova Road. And they're requesting to develop a maximum of 2 of those. So it will not clutter the front of the landscape, but will allow for additional exposure of the inventory. The maximum elevation restricted by the Land Development Code is 2 feet above grade, and they're requesting to elevate that just 1 additional foot. Now, provided all Land Development Code modifications are accepted, staff recommends approval to rezone the 8.5 plus or minus acres of land from the John Hall Chevrolet PD to a new plan development that will allow for the development of additional customer and inventory display parking to support the existing automobile dealership and the proposed automobile dealership to the north. A majority vote by the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the commission, and this concludes staff's presentation.
I just want to clarify something for the board, and I think I've got this right from a prior conversation I had with Anna. Technically, they're going to tie the 2 properties together with like a unity of title or some sort of covenant, right?
They have to comply with our off-site parking agreement requirements as part of the site plan, which provides alternatives. They can provide a deed, I believe, they can record a parking agreement, or they can do some sort of unity of title.
And so the waiver of the off-site signage is really for the limited purpose of having the sign on one place be used for advertising at the other location.
Correct. That's separate from the off-site parking issue.
Not for things
though.
that are off-site altogether.
No, it's specifically to advertise the dealership to the north. All right, the last thing was the item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Commission for first reading on January 4th, 2023, and second reading on January 18th, 2023. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, questions for staff?
Quick one, if I
Okay.
could, Mr. Chairman.
Quickly.
And I just want to be sure I have it right. I'm looking at wall signs under the LDC modifications, and on page 5 of our staff report, it talks about increasing it from 200 square feet to 3 signs of 126, which would be 378. On page 9, talking about wall signs, instead of 200, it has 120. I'm just trying to understand which of the 2. Is it 120, is it 200?
I
that we're
believe
looking
the
for?
Land Development Code has it at 200.
Okay, so. No problem, I just want to be sure we have it consistent. Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Robinson.
I am concerned about the,
Mike, please, yes.
I said I'm very concerned about the number of waivers that the applicant is requesting, and that you, or that you've agreed to recommend it. We've had this discussion before several times about the waivers that come before us, and if we consistently approve waivers, what's the use of having land development codes on the books. At what point do we say no? And how is it consistent, the waivers with the other businesses along that stretch of road? And if we approve all these waivers, can those other businesses come and says, hey, we want those waivers too?
So I'll address a couple things. The waivers are consistent with other automobile dealership plan developments that we have approved in the past. They are not above and beyond really any of the automobile dealerships that have come through our process as a plan development. With regard to plan developments, it's an elective process. The applicant is entitled to request whatever waivers that they would like. The plan development process is intended to grant applicants flexibility in exchange for a quality product. So these are the modifications that the applicant has requested, and staff is in support of them.
It seems to me then that we opened the floodgate previously by approving the waivers for the previous businesses, and it just follows a trend that the future businesses comes along and requested waivers. So if the waivers are going to be, approved on a regular basis, why don't we just include them in or adjust the code to include those requests? Because it seems to be the norm, and it has become the standard, and not necessarily an exception. And waivers are supposed to be exceptions, not standards.
So the land development code can't entirely contemplate every single development that comes through. That's why we have the plan development process. Every site is unique. Every development is unique. So this allows applicants to come forward if they have a plan that wouldn't feasibly be able to be developed within code requirements. This allows the applicant to come forward with an alternative plan, subject to staff review, obviously approval by the planning board and city commission, to allow for an alternative development that may not be contemplated by the land development code. So this is the reason for the plan development process, as well as the waivers that have been requested.
I understand that, but it seems to me, right, that the waivers, as per your statement, was granted to the previous businesses along that stretch, and it's not an abnormal request or an exceptional request. So the waivers is now almost a standard part of the practice that we have along that stretch of road.
I can't say that these waivers are a standard practice for all automobile dealerships, but it does incorporate waivers that we have seen on other automobile dealerships that have been approved in the city.
So, thank you. I was going to say, and Mr. Robinson, if you have questions on specific waivers and whether or not they're appropriate, you can address that. The applicant would be more than happy to discuss the waivers and why they're requesting those waivers as part of the request for approval.
I understand that, Mr. Dennis, but staff is agreeing and recommending that these waivers be approved.
Correct.
My contention is that the waivers is now becoming a standard practice, a standard part of the code. And it's not an exception anymore or flexibility. It's that we've opened the floodgate previously, and now all the dealerships are now saying, hey, this dealership requested it and it was approved. And this is the same concern that we have previously, and not only the dealerships, but a lot of the businesses that comes in and request the waivers, and it's no longer an exception, but a normal part of what we do. That's my concern. And we ought to address that, and we ought to be concerned and says, well, if these waivers are going to be approved for the businesses, why don't we just go ahead and recommend that that this be the norm or be the changes? Why have a rule or a standard if it's no longer adhered to? And it's not the applicant's, fault. It's our practice that we have agreed initially, and we have continually and consistently agreed as they come along, and that's my concern.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Other question, just before you leave, Hannah, my
Sure.
quick question for you.
Sure.
The display pads for those cars, is it going to intrude upon the sidewalk or is it going to be away from the sidewalk? Because-
So as I understand, most sidewalks are in the public right of way. They
Right.
wouldn't be able to
Okay.
put cars there. The display pads has to be a designated area. I believe they can't exceed 500 square feet. And it
But it
really
would
can
block-
only accommodate one car.
Right, but it
on
wouldn't
each one.
block their.
No, we wouldn't be able to allow that. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're
May
welcome.
we hear from the applicant, please?
Mr. Chair, for the record, Rob Merrill with Cobb Coal, 149 South Ridgewood, right here in downtown Daytona Beach. I've got Glenn Ritchie Jr. here with me. I think you guys are familiar with him and his dad. Great mayor here for many years. Hannah, thank you. You're always thorough. And so
Yes,
she
she
leaves it with very few words
Yeah.
for me, and you guys have a long night, it appears, tonight, the way it's going so far. So I won't say much more. So I've also got Steve Buswell in the back, if you have engineering questions.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, I can sum this up by saying we're retrofitting a site that was built back in 2000. And, you know, the Ritchie Auto Group's award-winning around the world, if you know, and you've seen their dealerships, you've probably bought cars from them, and they're doing a nice product. They're upgrading this site, putting some landscaping in, or they're adding a sidewalk and adding some new signage. So they're basically going to upgrade this, and it's going to look better, and it's already there. So some of these waivers that you're seeing in Milverton are because it's already there, and we're not tearing the thing down and starting over from scratch. You make a good point about, you know, whether maybe we should look at car dealerships differently than other retail, Dennis, and think about some of the things where they do displays and stuff that other retail doesn't do. I hate to say that because it puts work on you guys to rethink the code in that respect, but, you know, we rewrote this code.
That's a hard sentence.
I wanted to say 2 years ago, but
That was a longer.
I was just reminded it was 2015, but it's 800 and something pages. So it was a long time to get this thing done. But we've done a lot of glitch bills. This might be one to think about, you know, think about what car dealerships do differently than other retail. So good point, Milverton. In this situation, it's the waivers are, I think, in large part justified by the fact that we're retrofitting an existing site, a building that's been built. We're going to make it look nicer, but it's already a pretty decent building. We're putting the signage in that when you saw it, you realize it's to scale and it's tasteful. So I think it's hopefully agreeable to you guys. And any questions you have, I'm here to answer.
Okay. Ms. Lee?
Yep, thank you. Rob, just make me understand this a little bit. We know in the automobile industry now, things are changing. Inventories are shrinking. We've got problems with supply chain. We've got issues with getting chips from point A to point B. Knowing that environment, why do we need, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, Mr. Parker, the amount of parking spaces we're talking about here, given the environment in the industry, which I know Mr. Ritchie knows, he's forgotten more than I'll ever know. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, Glenn would know better, but I can tell you, I'm hoping that trend's turning, Mike. I mean, if it continues, hope you're saying, yeah.
It is, we're noticing more.
And we'll just get you to fill one up.
While he's coming up, Mike, I'll say that, you know, we are making these parking spots available mostly for inventory we hope is coming, right?
Yeah. So we are noticing in our industry, the lots are filling back up and stuff. Chips don't seem to be as near of an issue as currently as it has been in the past and stuff. So most of the requirements that we're asking for is what is required of us from the manufacturers. And we want a great facility. We want it to look great for the community. We want something that everybody can be proud of driving down Nova Road, saying this is our home. But I think you're going to see an influx where our employee base is rising. And where we're currently located, we've just been busting at the seams at this location. So this is a need. If we didn't need to do this, like you were mentioning with interest rates and stuff like that, it's a challenging time. It's a concern of ours to jump in, but we're willing to make the commitment financially to have great representation on Nova Road.
I'm glad that's got you up here. Let me ask you about signage just in general, where you talked about the ground sign area. Now you're going to take what's there and then put up the new. But when you're talking about 120 square feet and we're going to replace it with 3 signs of up to 200 square feet each, you're going from 120 to 600, if I've misunderstood. Please, jump in if I'm misunderstood.
So Mike, what I'll say is we are, the numbers you're looking at, I think were wall signs, Mike. And what we're talking about here is replacing in kind what's there now with a nicer sign. It's the same.
I'm just reading under maximum ground sign area is what I'm reading at.
So what you see is what you get. That's what we're doing. And it's the same as what's there. We've just changed the look of it.
Yeah.
To upgrade it.
Okay.
Exact same size.
Okay.
It's all the same.
Not how I'm reading this, but I do not know.
Yeah, and so
Just
it's
to
the
be
walls.
clear, the staff report compares what the land development code would normally allow versus what they're asking. The site was.
This is what's already there.
The
This was
site.
approved in the PD in 2000.
Right. There was a prior PD that already gave a lot of these entitlements out.
And it's been there. It's to scale. It's tasteful, and that's kind of the way you look at signage, right?
The numbers I was comparing was LDC, and that was out there.
Correct.
My bad. Thank you.
No worries.
Are there any other questions for applicant? Oh, Mr. Robinson?
Mr. Merrill.
Yes, sir.
My concern is not so much the enhancement to the business or the opposition to the business. My concern is that and it would probably help you also, is if we're getting all these waivers on a consistent basis, maybe we ought to look at addressing it in the LDC to make it somewhat normal if it has become the normal practice. And not only with the automobile business, but a lot of the other businesses that are coming in. Do we need to do a review of the code so that all these waivers doesn't become the norm? As we have stated in the past, that if we have all these waivers that we approved on a regular basis, maybe there is an indication that we need to review the code and to eliminate these waivers.
If I may, and I think Hannah made the point, when we're looking at waivers, and especially for a site like this is a site that's already existing. So what we're doing is trying to take what the current code would allow versus what is currently there, and we're just trying to make it fit. So a lot of times these modifications that you're looking at are just saying, this is already an existing condition that was developed with a certain standard that isn't meeting today's standards. It's going to stay the way it is. It's always been like this. We're going to keep it like this. But this is the modification that is part of that request. Now, what we do is when we review these sites, we always look for upgrades, how we can make this as close to the code as we possibly can, and that's what we do. And sometimes we can't get all the way there. That's why we see some of these modifications. We're trying to fit this in to the current code, and it doesn't always work out like that with existing properties. So we try to do it what we can in the best way we can. And so you're going to have modifications that are associated with that.
I understand that, but it seems to me that it's not only the applicant's business, but it comes on a regular basis before the board with a lot of waivers. And, what we ought to do is to be proactive, okay, and do some changes. If we see a pattern that's existing, we ought to come before the board and says, let's amend this code or go through the proper procedures or process to make some amendments so that the applicant don't have to request these waivers. And so the modifications becomes normal. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can take a look at it, I think. I'm happy to be involved in discussion about that, Dennis, if you guys want to do that.
Okay, we had another question. Tony?
I just had a comment. I live in that community in that area. So just thank you for not abandoning that area and moving out to the auto mall, but coming there to kind of enhance that community because that lot's been vacant for a while. So just to know that we'll be able to turn that curve and see the Genesis posted out there on one of those plots, the car and the truck. So we're excited.
And you guys will see us back. I just found out in the last couple of days that we're going to come back with a PD on the Hyundai dealership to the north. We didn't think we would need a PD, but apparently we're going to now. So we'll be back, and another one right next door. So yeah. So you heard Glenn earlier. I mean, he's got pride in the ownership out here on Nova Road, and we're happy to have him here for sure.
I was going to say, plus, we can't tell until someone wants to develop a property. Each one.
Exactly.
There she is. Thank you,
That's
Kathy.
not the law. That's Ms. Washington.
A voice from beyond.
I lived in that area years ago.
Uh-huh.
And until John Hall, Mr. Ritchie, moved into that building, it was dreadful.
Yeah.
And they've done a fantastic job. And I must say, the land development code is not changed week after week or month after month. That's a lot of work. And I think what they're asking is no more than is deserved to keep their business viable.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
And I love the new hairdo.
Yeah, I thought you looked, yeah. But I agree. I think it's wonderful that it's not going out to the auto mall, that it's right down in town. Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, when I built my building, I had to come and get a variance. So you can't tell what somebody needs, and they want to make their place unique. And so I think it's understandable that we have variances.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I do have a green form, Mr. John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, Daytona Beachside. Couple of things. One, I have absolutely no objections to any of the waivers. It's unique building. They sell cars. You have to view the cars in order to entice people to come to the property. The landscaping, you can't put the landscaping in front of the cars because you can't see the cars. So I don't have any problem with any of that. My problem arises, and it's true, Glenn does a fantastic product. All of his properties are fantastic. So this will be an addition to the neighborhood. I have no qualms about that. However, some of you will recall within the last 2 months, a guy named Ian and Nicole visited us. This property is now all asphalt, almost 100% asphalt. Glenn bought the property behind it, made 2 retention ponds, and then gave it to the city. So we do have some retention, but we still have asphalt. The trees, if you remember no, you weren't there. Jenny Nasak came before the city commission, and then some gentlemen came before the county council, and their revelation is that trees, a pine tree, which we're trying to get rid of, absorbs 50,000 gallons of water. Oak trees, 40,000 gallons of water. Our palm trees, squat, almost nothing. So when they talk about no shade trees are of value. 1, oxygen. 2, lowers the temperature of the air. 3, they absorb water. We need all of those. So I'm not asking you to put them in their parking lots because they're a mess on the cars. It's hard enough to keep them clean to start with. But the retention ponds, if it's okay with the city, to replace what should have been on this property near enough to absorb the water that would have been absorbed, the oxygen that would have been created would still be in the neighborhood, but on those ponds. So I don't think, Glenn, money-wise would be objectionable. But if the city would have allowed it, I'm asking if you would consider thinking for the future, because at some point, oxygen will be a problem. At some point, there will be another flooding. That's a given. So I'm asking you to transfer it from this property to the adjoining properties right next door. It would also enhance those drainage ponds to make them more look like a park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have any other green forms. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against this item? No? Item number 6. May I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, provided all LDC modifications are accepted, move approval of agenda item number 6, Plan Development General Rezoning, DEV 2022-059, Daytona Hyundai Genesis PD.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposed have the same right. It's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. You're welcome. Have a pleasant evening. Ms. Fountain, may we have item number 7, please?
Second Amendment to Memorial Health System, Inc., PD, Plan Development General, rezoning, DEV 2022-109, quasi-judicial hearing.
May we hear from staff, please?
All right, Hannah Ward, Senior Planner with the city. This is a request by SOS Sign and Lighting, and it's to amend the Memorial Health Systems PD, which is for the Advent Health facility. It's to allow for a modified sign plan, which will include the addition of an EMC monument sign along the interstate, signage for the surgery center, some additional signage modifications throughout the site, and to provide language addressing the completion of Memorial Medical Parkway to Strickland Range Road. All right, so as you can see on the location map, the site is located on the west side of Williamson Boulevard. It's just north of Strickland Range Road and south of Hand Avenue, and it also abuts I-95. The site is currently partially developed. As you can see here, this is where the future surgery center is going to go. That came before the board for approval in July. And then you can see the termination of Memorial Medical Parkway to the south, and that will, I don't have an alignment for that, but that is intended to extend down to Strickland Range Road in the near future. All right, the future land use on the property is mixed use, and the zoning on the property is planned development general. So in 2005, the City Commission approved the Memorial Health Systems PD, which now has become the Advent Health Facility. In 2019, the City Commission approved the First Amendment to the PD, which modified the existing signage plan. I believe this is when they made the conversion from the Florida Memorial Hospital to Advent Health, and they updated all the signs. And then in July of 2022, we brought forward the site plan for the Advent Health Surgery Center. So now the applicant is coming forward with the Second Amendment, which will include a modified sign plan, including an EMC and some additional signage to advertise or for the surgery center to show the surgery center. And then the amendment will also include and require the completion of Memorial Medical Parkway to Strickland Range Road within 3.5 years from the issuance of the site plan approval letter for the surgery center. So as you can see here, this is the monument sign that they've proposed. This is going to be located along I-95 within the limits of their property. It's proposed to be 1,127 square feet, so we'll break that down a little bit. 580 square feet will be the EMC. 416 square feet will be static copy area on top of the sign. And then it's proposed to be 30 feet tall. So I'm just going to break down the modifications that they've requested for the EMC first, then we'll get into some of the other signs. So at present, the site would be allowed to have one EMC, but there's specific standards that they've requested to modify. They've requested to increase the sign height from 8 feet to 30 feet. The EMC display area will comprise approximately 68% of the sign cabinet. The LDC currently limits it to 50%. They've requested to increase the sign area. It's currently permitted to be 360 square feet for an EMC sign. They've requested to develop the sign including the static and the electronic copy at 1,127 square feet. And then the additional sign area or the static copy area is only permitted by the LDC to represent 15% of the sign cabinet, and they've added an additional larger static copy area representing approximately 85% of the EMC sign cabinet, which would be 416 square feet. There are details showing kind of a rendering of the sign, how it would look adjacent to a person, and a very detailed sign package in your staff report in case you all wanted to reference that. Now, with regard to the surgery center signage, I just pulled out a couple of the signs because there is a very large, extensive package, but I wanted to kind of identify some of the ones that stood out the most. So for some of the existing signs, they're going to have to replace them to add an additional panel advertising the surgery center. So as you can see, it's listed at the bottom of sign 001. There are a couple of different areas in the sign plan where you can see they clearly laid out existing and proposed signs. You can see where those changes are being made. Sign 021 or 21, that's the Advent Health Surgery Center wall signs. There's a couple of those proposed on the building. I just wanted to pull that out so you could see exactly what that was going to look like. And then they do have a couple additional monument signs specifically for the surgery center, and I pulled out the sign number 25 so you all could see that. To the right on this page, you'll see all the signs that are being requested, the table for the surgery center signage. It includes 1 monument sign, which we showed, 4 wall signs for the building, and then the directional signs, which will just help guide people to where the actual surgery center is located. And those are signs 26 through 29, and I showed a snapshot of that there. With regard to the hospital, they're just adding 2 additional wall signs to different elevations. And the package includes not only just a sign detail, like a construction level detail, but also what the placement of those signs on the building would look like so you all can see what the scale is going to be like. All right. And that is pretty much the scope of what's being requested in addition to the roadway extension that is required to be completed. So staff recommends approval of the Second Amendment to the Memorial Health Systems PD that would modify existing signage and address the completion of Memorial Medical Parkway to Strickland Range Road. The item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Commission for first reading on January 4th and for second reading on January 18th, 2023. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the City Commission. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Very good.
Questions for staff?
Just a brief one, and if I could. The modifications we're talking about with the LDC is when, for example, the height requirement going from 8 feet to 30 feet. That 8 feet is what's in the LDC, not necessarily what's out there currently.
Correct. We do have EMCs of all different heights and sizes throughout the city. Oftentimes, those standards were put, the EMC standards were put in place and they're very specific. We've seen that, you know, just on individual projects, they're looking for a different type of sign that would have different type of electronic content. And so that's why you'll see modifications come through for EMCs. With regard to the hospitals in general, and this is an important distinction, our code, so we have a hospital medical district in the land development code, but it's typically, I don't think we really have any large facilities, hospital facilities that are actually developed under the hospital medical district. Hospitals need a lot more signage than what our code currently permits, so it's really difficult to do a comparison there. The sign plan was very, very detailed as showing the existing and proposed, so I didn't want to take away from that because I thought that was a very clear representation of what they were doing.
It showed, it really helped.
It did, but my point is that when we're taking a look at this and we're doing kind of a comparative analysis of the proportion, how much more is going to be there as opposed to what's there, you don't necessarily get those answers by looking at the modifications. You may get them as you dig into the detail that you provided. There's a distinction there.
Well, and the land development code provides standards that, you know, everyone is required to follow, but as we talked about with plan developments, every property and every development is unique, and obviously for a hospital, they need a lot of different signage to advertise to make sure ambulances can get in and out and people can get in and out of the site safely and know where to go. So obviously there is a lot of signs proposed for the hospital.
And certainly it's understandable that there would be more or a lot, as you say, but we also have to look at what's appropriate as well. So,
Correct.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Any other questions? No? May we hear from the applicant, please?
Hi, I'm Deanna Kaufman from SOS Sign and Lighting Services. We are the applicant that is doing the sign amendment package.
And would you just state your address, please?
I'm sorry?
Address?
Oh,
For the record.
2127 South Ridgewood Avenue in South Daytona.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I actually brought a couple of picture boards that actually would help the presentation a little easier. Would you mind if I bring them up?
Absolutely.
Get some help.
Yeah. That's what you brought your partner there.
And this is also Clifton Scott Hannah brought up the
Okay,
EMC.
we'll get it up there.
Okay, so this is an example of why we want the EMC to be as large. I know you were talking about modifications of the EMC board itself. But currently what's there is a very small monument sign. When you're coming up 95, you need something very large on the property so that someone can tell that this is a hospital on the property itself. And then the EMC part of the sign will be advertising what the hospitals are, what the hospitals are advertising on the property itself.
Yes.
This property itself currently has a main hospital, it has a building, and it also has a cancer center. Not many people know about the cancer center because there's not a whole lot of advertising for that center. We're also adding the new building, which is the MOB, and also the surgery center. This will also advertise for the surgery center on that location as well. This board here is actually what the new building will look like, and this is a sample of the main sign on the building. This is facing northbound on the building itself. We would also want to put a sign on the south side of this building and 2 smaller signs near the entrance of that building, which
Yes.
is identified in your package itself. These are the 2 signs that we are asking to add to the main hospital itself, with the Advent Health with the logo showing on the west elevation, and then you have a new one that we are asking as well for the south elevation. Again, when you're traveling 95, you don't realize this is a hospital.
Absolutely. Right.
So this is to
Yes.
let people know this is the hospital and that they need to start planning to get over and to exit LPGA, or they need to exit Granada to be able to get to it. I know this looks busy, and we do apologize,
No.
but this is actually a picture of where all the signs would be located. As you can see, there are 2 different colors of circles. The one color of the circles is the existing, and the other color is what we are proposing. I know it does look like a lot that we are proposing, but there's really only 11 new signs that we're asking for the package. 2 on the actual main hospital, the large monument sign with the EMC, and then 8 for the new property that is being built. And you need 4 of those around the property, and you will need some on the building itself. So you've got 4 on the building, and you've got 4 on the property itself. When you tie that into any other large facility around the towns, this is not a lot of sign for this
So
area.
you're saying you have 28 now, what
We
you're
have
saying is that what-
29 we're proposing.
And so that would mean you had 18, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
got you, thank you.
Any questions?
No, I just want to say, when you have an emergency and you're trying to get to a certain place, you need good signage.
Yeah.
I mean, that's-
Exactly.
that's-
Yeah.
That's a good
So,
point, Mr. Chair.
yeah.
Well, it could cause an accident if someone's coming along on 95 and they're trying to find yeah, I think we need
And we
those
appreciate
signs.
everything Hannah has done to get us to this point.
Yeah.
So she is really awesome in helping us assist with this.
Now, one more question. You said one of the signs was going to be 30 feet. Which
Yes,
one is that?
That is the monument sign that would be facing off of 95. It would be this one here, the
Oh,
30
okay.
feet
Oh, that's
tall.
great, yeah.
Yeah.
When you're on 95, it's really not looking that tall, and it is actually going to be away from the road.
Right.
So it's not bearing any restrictions in obstructions or anything like that.
Thank you.
And as an aside, it's kind of fun, the little bit of a joke that's in the sign.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Little play on words.
Yes. Yeah, I think it looks great.
Okay. Questions? Any questions? Additional questions? No? All right.
Oh, I'm good.
Hold on,
Yay.
hold on. Don't go away yet. Mr. Robinson.
Close, but it's
No.
Oh, Mr.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. If I'm driving down 95 and I see the hospital sign, how do I know to get to it? Will there be a indication on the interstate itself to tell me that there's a hospital at the next exit?
I believe on 95, there is a hospital exit sign going north up to Granada. Is there one on?
Yeah.
And there's one on going south onto LPGA as well. The hospital is actually located right off of North Williamson Boulevard. So Granada gets you there and LPGA gets you there very easily.
Sometimes when I come down Hand Avenue and I'm trying to get to the hospital, I don't see a sign that says make a left to get to the hospital.
Are you proposing you want another sign on the property?
No. I'm proposing.
Wrong way here.
No. What I'm saying.
We can add another sign.
What I'm saying is there should be a road sign where Hand comes into Williamson that says a directional sign that says, the hospital to the left.
Mark, would
There
you
is
be
no.
able to answer this question about the road sign for?
There is no blue sign.
He is
I don't-
the architect
yeah.
on the project, so I'm glad that he stayed. for
I don't see
as well.
when you come off of Hand Avenue, right, and you're looking for the hospital, there's no blue sign that says hospital this way. And maybe you might want to propose that to the city.
For the record, Mark Dowson, that is a separate process. That's not something that the city can grant in a PD because it's an off-site sign. But there is a way of getting those public information signs, and there's a process to go through. And that's a good idea. I mean, if people are coming down that road and they might not know the way to go left or right, that is something we could look into.
Yeah, because you're coming down the interstate, you get off the exit, okay, and then
Either Granada or.
Know what?
Yeah, that's the two main
yeah,
exits.
yeah. Know what?
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate
Well, the monument sign is going to be so nice and bright and up.
Yes, and I love blue.
You'll see it a mile
Follow
away,
the yellow
right, Tony?
Follow
That is the idea.
Follow
to
the
see it
yellow brick
before you
road.
hit the exit, so that you're not rushing into traffic or you're not causing an accident,
changing.
making you have to end up at the hospital.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Well, Clifton had the other green sheet. You good? Okay.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, I just wanted to, Hannah had brought up the point that part of in addition to the signs, something that we added on late into the process was the connection from the current internal roadway system down to Strickland Range Road, and that was going to be completed within the next 3.5 years. And that's something that doesn't exist right now, and we wanted to have that in place so that within 3.5 years, we'll have that connection in place for that roadway. So that's part of the PD.
All right. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against this item? Oh, thank you very much. May I have a motion, please?
I move we approve Plan Development General PD-G rezoning, Second Amendment, DEV 2022-109, Memorial Health Systems Incorporated PD, Agenda Number 7, quasi-judicial hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposers have the same right. Carries. Thank you very much. All right. Ms. Fountain, may we have item number 8, please?
Third Amendment to HHMC PD, Plan Development General, rezoning DEV 2022-121, quasi-judicial hearing.
Can we hear from staff, please?
Me talk.
Tonight.
Hannah Ward, Senior Planner with the city. This is a request by Darren Elkind with Paul Elkind Brands and Paul, and it's on behalf of the Halifax Hospital Medical Center to amend the HHMC PD. And it's just a request to reconfigure an existing parcel within the PD into separate lots that would allow for one of the lots to be accessed via an existing private roadway, which is kind of considered a driveway by our code. All right, so the site, which is shown in the subject area in black, is approximately 200 feet south of the intersection of Dunn Avenue and North Clyde Morris Boulevard. Currently on site, there is an existing parking lot. The future land use is mixed use, and the zoning is plan development general. In 2012, the City Commission approved the HHMC PD, which covered 77.5 acres, and it was intended to allow for a mixed-use development across from the Halifax Hospital Medical Center. In 2014, the City Commission approved the First Amendment to the HHMC PD and added an additional 16 acres to the development for a total of 93.5 acres. And then in 2017, the City Commission approved the Second Amendment to the HHMC PD, which revised the development master plan and the preliminary plat for the property. So now the applicant's coming forward to reconfigure one of the existing parcels within the PD to allow for it to be subdivided into two separate lots, with one of those being accessed from a private driveway. So as you can see here, the site is currently one parcel. As you can see, there was a building there at one point in time. It's since been removed, and they're looking to redevelop this property, so this is why they're requesting the split. As you can see here, that's the split that they're proposing. One of the parcels will not have frontage upon an improved or public street. So that is why they're requesting the amendment, to request specific modifications from land development code requirements. So the two that are requested, the first one for a subdivision is the requirement for lot frontage on a public street. They're requesting to waive that requirement to allow for the configuration proposed. There will be an access easement, and then the parcel that does not have frontage on Clyde Morris will be accessed through that driveway that currently exists with an access easement that allows for that to happen. And then the second requirement is the land development code requires all lots within a subdivision to have a minimum 20-foot frontage on a public right-of-way. Since the configuration would not allow for that, they also had to request this modification. And really, that's the scope of the amendment that they're proposing. So provided these two modifications are accepted, staff recommends approval of the third amendment to the HHMC PD, which will reconfigure the existing parcel into two separate lots and allow for the lot to be accessed via an existing private roadway. The item is tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Commission for first reading on January 4th and for second reading on January 18th, 2023, and a majority vote of the Planning Board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the City Commission. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, maybe we do we have any questions for staff? Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Can we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening. My name is Darren Elkind. My professional address is 142 East New York Avenue in DeLand. It's my pleasure to be with you this evening on behalf of Halifax Hospital. I'll be brief and just say this is we're going to repurpose the building. There will be there is a pending development on the parcel that is off the road, off of Clyde Morris. Be an office building for a single user. We are selling it to a private developer, which will build the building and lease it long-term to a governmental entity. Good news about that is it goes on tax rolls.
Yeah.
May I answer any other questions?
Okay. Are there any questions for applicant?
No question.
May I make
None?
one? Oh, yes, sir.
No, I do not. Please continue.
May I make one point?
Yes, sir.
When a lawyer or an applicant gets up and makes a comment that's complimentary, it seems a bit insincere because you're just trying to curry favor. But and this one, I got to say it. The presentations that your planning staff does with the graphics are incredible. You've got it beat up throughout Volusia County.
Fortunate.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's.
They do.
Don't take that for granted.
Yes, they work
Thank you
hard.
so much.
Anything further?
Okay, no question. Thank you. I don't have any green forms for that item. Is there anyone that would like to speak for or against? Nope. Okay, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, provided the proposed LDC modifications are accepted, move approval. Agenda number 8, Plan Development General, PDG rezoning amendment, DV 2022-121, third amendment to the Halifax Hospital Medical Center PD.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those have the same right. Okay, it carries. Thank you very much. Item number 9.
Add Event Centers Land Development Code Text Amendment DEV 2022-097 legislative hearing.
And we hear from staff, please.
Good evening, Rose Askew. I'm Planning Project Manager. I will try to be brief. This is a request by the Development and Administrative Services Department, Planning Division, to amend Article 5, Use Standards, Section 5.2 and 5.3 of the Land Development Code to add event centers as a principal or special use in various zoning districts and adding use-specific standards to govern the new use, amending Article 11 to add a definition for event centers. So recently, we've been receiving quite a few requests to be able to have uses such as wedding receptions, birthday parties, comedy shows, medium to small type events throughout the city. And currently, our Land Development Code does not have regulations that would actually allow that kind of use. Under our previous code, these types of uses were allowed under the term called places of assembly. And the definition is shown there, and it's also in your staff report. The definition for places of assembly did not really address the types of uses that are being asked for. It addressed things like large facilities for performances and different types of events, but it didn't address being able to have medium to small. So you're looking at stadiums, athletic centers, concert halls. Those are the things that were allowed under the old code under the place of assembly. None of these uses actually fit that category. So what we did is when the new Land Development Code was approved, the places of assembly term went away, and we then used other indoor recreation and entertainment use development code, and it also did not address it. As you can see in the definition that we currently have, it is one that also looks at things like health and fitness centers, spas, gymnastics facilities. It doesn't address if I want to be able to have a business where I do wedding receptions, or a business where I do birthday parties, or a business where I want to have a comedy show or something.
Yeah.
None of that fits into this category. So what staff is requesting in order to try to have a use in our Land Development Code that will fit the types of uses that are being requested, such as weddings and receptions, banquet halls, birthday parties, comedy shows, and other similar uses, we're requesting to add the term event center. And so in order to do that, the amendments that we're proposing will be to Article 5, Section 5.2, which is the principal use table for permitted and special uses, the principal use table for redevelopment zoning districts, and for planned development districts. So the term that will be added will be event center, and it'll be a permitted or special use in the following zoning districts. So to come up with these zoning districts, we worked with different areas. Staff worked with the legal department, the redevelopment department, because it also includes redevelopment areas as well, to come up with zoning districts that would best be suited for this actual new use. So this is the map, this is the table that shows the regular zoning districts where they would be allowed as either a permitted use or a special use.
Yeah.
The second table is the table that the redevelopment staff determined were the best zoning districts that would work for permitted and special uses in redevelopment zoning areas. And the final table is the permitted use table for planned development projects when they come through, if they want to have it in there. And typically, as we've been discussing tonight, planned development projects, when they come through, they have specific criteria that they put in their agreement that'll determine how they develop it. However, they will have to try to meet the standards that are in our code that we're providing coming up here for the use. And so there's quite a few standards that are being required, and most of them are to protect residential neighborhoods.
Yes.
So we wanted to make sure that anyone that was anywhere near a residential neighborhood, we tried to put some criteria in here to make sure we didn't do anything that was going to cause harm to that neighborhood. In fact, we even have it in here where if it's allowed as a special use, there's some additional criteria that you have to meet. If you look down at the bottom, they have to meet the maximum capacity you can have is 500. The maximum event space is 7,500 square feet. And it's prohibited from operating between the hours of 12 midnight to 8 a.m. That's to make sure you don't have a lot of activity going on late at night, keeping people up.
Yes.
The final amendment will be to Article 11, Section 11.5, to add the definition for an event center. And it's a private, indoor, entirely within an enclosed structure use, providing for activities that are operated or carried on primarily for financial gain. And then it gives examples of the use, but we also wanted to clarify that the term event center includes any contracted, leased, or sublet premises connected to or operated in conjunction with the event center for the purpose of including food preparation or facilities, concessions halls. The use does not include indoor recreation and entertainment uses like nightclubs, bars, clubs or lodges, clubhouses developed for residential developments. So we wanted to make sure we clarify that if you come in to get a license for an event center, you're not going to be able to operate it like a nightclub. You're not going to be able to operate it like a bar. It has to operate for the purpose and meet the criteria that we're putting in the Land Development Code. So it's we've had requests from board members for us to bring it forward to them if it's something that's going to be affecting zoning districts where they operate. So this amendment was taken to the Downtown Ballou Road Redevelopment Board at their November 1st meeting. The discussion included concerns about the possibility of the use intruding to the residential neighborhoods, and so we tweaked the regulations that we were proposing to make sure we put some things in place to make sure that didn't happen. And there were also questions relating to the size and location of the new use and the special use process. So there were some board members that did not understand that the special use process has some very specific criteria in our code that can't be waived. Plus, they have to they come to you for review as well as the city commission. If they're in a redevelopment area, they also have to go to that redevelopment board for them to review as well. It also was presented to the Midtown Redevelopment Board at their November 8th meeting. And the primary focus in the discussion was related to parking and how it could be allowed as part of the use. What we explained to them was, in the discussion, that would be part of the site plan when they're developing it, how the parking would lay out. But we did have some criteria where we didn't want parking to be in the front of the structure, side or rear. And that was basically the most discussion that we had, and all of that will be reviewed through our technical review team when they come in to develop the use on the property. So as a recommendation, staff recommends approval to amend Article 5, Use Standards, Section 5.2 and 5.3 of the Land Development Code to add event centers as a principal or special use in various zoning districts and adding use-specific standards to govern the new use. Amending Article 11, Section 11.5 to add a definition for event center. A majority vote of the planning board members present and voting is required to recommend approval to the City Commission. This concludes staff's presentation.
Questions for staff? Mr. Robertson?
I want to commend you for your.
All right.
Speak in the mic.
Hello?
Thank you.
Oh, no, I want to commend you for your diligence in including the redevelopment boards and getting their input. And to me, that is very crucial. One of the questions I have, when you came up with the maximum capacity of 500 patrons, how did you reach such a high number in terms of a residential area?
Well, it may seem like a high number, but when you're doing a wedding reception or an indoor concert, it's not really a high number. That's why we made that the maximum amount. But in addition to looking at that number, the criteria that's part of what we put in place for the redevelopment, for the residential areas, there's some very specific standards that require them to be so many feet away from any kind of residential use. So even though they can have 500 people, if you look at the criteria, it has to be located a minimum of 250 feet from any residential zoning district or adjacent to a residential use. But if you're a special use, you've got some additional things that you have to meet as well. So we made sure that the distance, we were keeping them away from the residential neighborhoods, even though it might be 500 people, there's no way they should be able to, if they follow the regulations, intrude on that residential neighborhood, not to mention everything has to be indoors. No activity can be outside at all other than parking the vehicles and walking inside.
And just for the board members' benefit, special uses they require review and approval by the city commission based on criteria that relate to it. You know, does this fulfill a public need? Is it harmonious with surrounding uses? It's not one and done. You don't just get in there and get that approved. The commission has a lot of latitude to reject any special use.
Okay.
Does it also comply with the health department regulations and code enforcement
Well,
also?
as far as, I'm not really sure what you're asking about the health department, but for code enforcement follows the land development code regulations. So if they're violating these regulations that get approved, that's when code enforcement gets involved. But code enforcement is going to be looking to make sure they're meeting this criteria that we're proposing. I'm not really sure how to answer the question.
Well, say for
related to the
example,
health
they're
department.
serving food or, indoor smoke.
So nothing we do waives
Those
the
requirements.
obligation to comply with state law.
Okay,
And that would be something somebody has to do regardless of whether they get a special use permit.
thank you.
Ms. Humphrey?
Also, I'm sure that there's something about sound, because I know so many times in residential areas, they can hear the noise quite loud and late. So I'm sure that's addressed in this.
Yes, and we have some specific criteria relating to sound and volume. I think it's 70 decibels. It can't be any higher, but their sound has to also be inside the building. It can't be outside. And the distance that we're requiring them to be away from the residential uses should also be buffering. But, part of their development is developing it the way that the code says. So there will be some buffering requirements and different things that they'll have to do in order to develop the use on the site.
Good. Sounds good to me.
Okay, I have a couple questions for you real quick. How many of those event centers do we have in our city that you know of? What happens to those event centers that we already have? And then are there permit fees associated with that?
Yeah, any business that opens up in our city is required to get a business license to operate. So it's based on, permits and licensing would have that type of information. It's based on the type of use you're asking for. They have a list of what fees are associated with the type of use that you're having. They would also be able to pull a report that would tell how many we currently have. But
We do have some, that's correct.
very few, because of the way that the regulations are in the land development code. That's why we're having to do this. They're not able to meet any of the criteria to establish those kind of uses here in our city.
Yeah, you find a lot of the events centers are associated with hotels, so they're accessory. You find some of the rooms in the hotels where the events would occur. This would allow a freestanding building to be an event center, which right now the code doesn't permit.
Okay, and I know there's a event place off of the LPGA exit right there by Old Civil Lot, but that's Holly Hill, I believe it's.
Yes, sir. That's not, people call all the time about that property and it's not in our
But
city.
There are others, I'm not gonna give away addresses just in case, in the city that I know they have events at, so I just asking. All right, leave that alone. Are there any other questions? Ms. Washington?
No questions, but I appreciate that detailed report.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Indeed.
You're welcome.
All right, I don't have any green sheets. Anybody else? They are the applicants. May we have a motion, please?
Sure. Move approval of agenda item number 9, LDC text amendment, DEV 2022-097, Event Center.
Second.
Okay.
You guys scared me there for a
I
minute.
know.
Took a minute.
That
there.
missed- that-
We have
I read it
motion
wrong.
properly second. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, have
Aye.
the same right. Thank you. It carries. Thank you very much.
A lot of work.
We'll move now to item number 10, which is other business, and may we have the downtown Blue Road redevelopment area board representative
I just have a question.
absent.
I just have a question. I was driving down Beach Street. I was shocked how many buildings are down. That's wonderful. But it was a shock. I turned and whoop, 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 buildings down.
Down meaning.
Now how?
The ones, I guess, that flooded so terribly on Beach Street.
I think it's part of
north,
the framework apartments. They're preparing the work for the framework apartments, so they're taking those buildings
Yeah,
down.
but I mean, it was great. It just was a surprise. I went, oh, gosh.
See, I missed that. So, Midtown Redevelopment Area Board Representative?
I did not attend the meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Beachside Redevelopment Area Board Representative?
Beachside Redevelopment Board was canceled.
Okay. With all the surfing going on. I mean, public comments, and I know, let's see, 10D. Okay. I do have Miss Ann Ruby. Thank you.
And Mr. Nicholson. And Mr. Nicholson.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Ann Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. I am wondering where we are with Costco, because I have that in my calendar per the newspaper article for February of 2024, I think. And I'm really hoping we get there. So I don't remember it coming before the commission, so I'm really looking for an update on the Costco project.
Well, the Costco project probably will not come before the city commission. It'll probably come before the planning board as a site plan. They're going to be meeting code requirements, and it'll be based on the PD agreement that's already approved out there for One Daytona. So that is still in review.
Okay.
We did just approve the site plan for the surrounding area, for the infrastructure, for the roads to be able to go in place. That was a separate site plan. There was no square footage associated with that, so staff was able to approve that administratively. I would anticipate the Costco site plan probably coming forward to the planning board in January, maybe February. That's a guess. It's still in the review process. It's not on our list to come back in December, so we can anticipate then. As far as when the newspaper said it was going to go in, I don't know.
Well, I know, but I have to have that hope.
Yeah.
So thank you. Now I know what to look forward to that in January or February. The other thing I want to talk about is I went to the unofficial developer-initiated meeting that was held last night at Steve's on the 29 to 36-story property that's proposed for the east side of Atlantic Avenue up in the 2000 block of North Atlantic. And there was a remarkable lack of knowledge on how the planning process works, not just on the part of the citizenry, but on the part of the developer's representative there, who was, I believe, Scott Miller from Gelcorp. And Hannah Ward did a phenomenal presentation to you guys. And I would request that as an educational effort, you ask the audiovisual people to just cut out that part of that video of that meeting, put on a pretty beginning, and post it on your website so that it's available for citizens to be able to go and click on it and get an understanding of what the development process looks like. So they will understand what their rights are in terms of how they can respond and when they can respond and where the important points are for them to respond. So I just think it would be, you've already got the great development. Oh, Hannah's not here.
She's already gone.
Yeah, and I didn't have her email to thank her for that, but she did a phenomenal job, and I think that would be a good public service, you know, leveraging something you already have.
Yeah.
So, thank
It's
you.
a good idea. We'll talk to IT about, and the city manager about putting that up on our page so people can access that.
Also send it to the developers before they come in.
And we could also, if it's online, we can point them in that direction and say, take a look at this, it'll help with the process. And I will say with that particular project, they came into TRT and kind of talked about their project. They haven't submitted an application yet. You know, I think they wanted to present to the neighborhood kind of what they were looking at and then kind of step back and help that to redesign their project or design their project. So we'll see how that works out. But they still haven't submitted an application yet. The meeting you went to was what they were considering a neighborhood meeting. After we took a look at that, they weren't meeting all of the requirements. So I told them that, you know, you guys are going to have to do this again. So they rescheduled another neighborhood meeting, but they decided to keep that original meeting because they had already sent out letters, and if anybody was going to come, they want to be able to inform them. So there's going to be another meeting on that. I think it's November 30th. So that'll be for that project.
Thank you. I know Mr. Nichols, he's not on my green sheet, but.
He did it on one.
No, I have a 6 and a 4. He didn't write the item number. I got you. Go ahead. We'll put it on.
John Nixon, Beachside. One on the meeting that she was just referencing. Could you see if we could not plan it on a city commission night? Because there are some people that go to city commission meetings and would not be able to. So Christmas, New Year's, there's certain nights that you should not do a public meeting. Secondly, getting back to the malls, it really is something that I spoke to before. It is something that we have to deal with because we've gone through this. Other than Kathy Washington, nobody was here when the first mall opened up on Nova and what it did to Beach Street. So it kind of created a vacuum for Beach Street. Then we went out a little bit further for another mall, and then Nova died. Then we went for another mall, and that one died. So these malls are needing to be reinvigorated. They need to be reimagined. This apartments are fantastic. It really is. You have to admit that. So, but the parking lot, and I spoke about the parking lots, everybody's doing the internet. We no longer need 6,000 cars in a parking lot. So I've spoken to before about parking, especially in the hotels. Again, Kathy, after the last 12 years, floor area ratio we need to look at again. We need to look at the hotels because we are getting 5 four-star hotels in a 2-block area. They're all having restaurants, and they're all going to be required to have their guests move their cars from one stall to the next stall to go to the hotel restaurant, which doesn't make sense. So we require, well, because you need so many rooms for the hotel and you need so many rooms for the restaurant. And they can't be interchangeable, and they should be interchangeable. Because nobody in a hotel is going to move their car to go downstairs to a restaurant. That car is staying where it was. So there's no need for that extra parking lot or extra stalls in the garages. So that really has to be looked at. Submerged land, I always talk about. We have 3 submerged land in the city. There were a problem on 2 of the 3. One, it was 40 foot wide and they wanted to put a 12-story building on it. It was really crammed in there. I don't know if you recall, down on South Beach Street, right next to the marina. So, yep, it was a beautiful building, but it was just too tiny a land. The other one, right north of Seabreeze, it was waste land that they dumped in the river, and lo and behold, the state sold it. And they were going to put a marina there. And all those people that had riparian rights lost them. So let's solve it now before it comes up again. Event centers. It was nice that they had the meetings for the downtown, but it doesn't affect them. It was nice to have it in Midtown, but it doesn't affect them. What affects is Surfside, Beachside. Those are the ones that were mentioned, and we didn't get to talk about it. Surfside is all basically single-family homes. There are only 2 properties. There's a church with absolutely no parking, and then there's a little commercial property with 12 parking spaces. Otherwise, it's all single families. Where are you going to put an event center in Surfside Village? But it was specifically mentioned. Then the second one was single-family residences. I don't want a center next to my house. So I would ask you about that in the future when things come up. If it applies to a certain neighborhood and has not gone to that CRA, wait until it goes to that CRA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes,
Twice we scheduled this item to go to the Beachside Redevelopment Board, and both times the meetings were canceled. That's the only reason it has not gone.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we'll provide are we planning on going to the beach? We're still planning on going. It's just going to be after the planning board. We're trying to get there. And
Both times it got canceled because of the storms.
Storms, right.
And so we are going to be going as soon as they schedule another meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, no other staff, public comments, staff comments?
I do have one thing in your packets today. You had a 2023 planning board meeting schedule. This is something we do every year. We do have some change, and you have to approve the schedule for next year. Again, for November and December, instead of being the 4th Thursday, we'll have it on the 3rd Thursday to accommodate the holiday season. So we'll need a vote on that.
Okay, everybody looked at your calendar, checked your dates. Yep. Checked it twice. All right, may I have a motion?
Yep.
So move. I make a motion to accept the 2023 calendar schedule dates.
And
for
I'll
planning board.
second that gladly.
Okay, so it's been motion properly second. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposers have the same right. Carries. Thank you.
Okay, and the last thing I wanted to point out, taking a look at our agenda, we had the Volusia Mall, the apartments, we had Daytona Hyundai, redevelopment of that site. We had the Third Amendment to HHMC, where they're looking to put a building over there. These are all infill sites. See, so these are properties that have already been developed and are now being redeveloped as something else. So these are good things that are happening. A lot of times we see activity that's happening on the west side of the city, an area that hasn't been developed. These are things that are coming back to the city and doing some infill development. So that's a good thing for the city.
I do want to say I appreciate all of staff and the work that they have done in making this a lot easier than what it is, or make it seems easy. So thank you for the job. Well done, City Attorney, Planning
Great
Director, and to the entire staff. Thank you very much. Board comments.
I'd just like to wish everyone a blessed Thanksgiving holiday, not only my fellow board members, but staff, and obviously our citizens that are watching Daytona Beach. But God bless you folks, and enjoy your holiday.
And I am so happy that the bump that was by the graveyard that was improperly placed has been removed, and that the gentleman with his seeing eye dog is able to walk there without any. And I will hold my breath waiting for the part of the sidewalk beside my building that I actually tripped on and fell. Hopefully that is coming up to be repaired. I will hold my breath.
Okay. And Ms. Washington, thank you. Ms. Washington, any comments?
I'd like to just say thank you for being able to join. I missed you all. Also, I'd like to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and keep me in your prayers. Hopefully I'll be back home by December.
You are photogenic, dear. You should see how good you look.
Really?
Yes.
Yes. Well, happy Thanksgiving to you all.
Thanksgiving.
Meeting adjourned.
Ms. Humphrey.